Hello there. So today we are going to talk about large action models. So Salesforce has come up with few large action models recently, and their claim is while large language models are great at generating text and media, these large action models or LAMs make it a step further by performing complex steps autonomously. So imagine that an AI that doesn't just generate text but actively engage in business workflows like sending emails, managing your CRM, or even making decisions in real time. So, LAMPs are built to handle actions across different environments. They seamlessly integrate with tools, data, and systems. They can plan, execute, and adapt to user commands, making them ideal for industries like marketing, customer service, and beyond. So, today, what we are going to do is today we are going to have first of all explore all the things which have been made by Salesforce. So we'll just see one of the models as such, and we are just going to call one of the examples which are given here. So we are going to load a model, and we are just going to call some official examples, but then we are going to go one step further. So we will then create some Flask REST APIs, and the reason why we are doing it is just to see if those function API calls work or not. So basically we'll be creating some proxy business processes like sending email, getting customer information, and then we are going to execute these large action models on top of that. So not only we are going to get the parameters, we are going to actually execute those REST API calls and get the JSON response. So let's get started. So first of all, we are using L4 GPU. Then what we have done is we have mounted to a particular drive. So within Colab, you can mount to a particular drive. Then what we are doing is we are installing various libraries like transformers, datasets, and tokenizers, and Flask. So format 3 are for loading the models as well as tokenizer, and the later is to create REST APIs. So then what we are trying to do is we are loading the model, and the location is this. So we are loading the 7 billion model, and we have loaded the model and the tokenizer. If you are already aware with the transformers, these are the essential steps. So basically in these two steps we are loading the model as well as tokenizer, and that's what we are going to use. And since we are on L4, we can run it pretty quickly. Now what we have done is, and again this is from the Salesforce itself, so they have provided within their documentation the task instruction as well as format instructions, and these are like pretty clear as such. So the task instruction is you are a composing function and so on. The format instructions tells about adhering to a particular JSON structure, and that's what is needed as an input. Then the most important thing what we need is we need the function definition, and here we are using OpenAI format. So basically what you can do is you can define how your function will look like, what parameters they will be expecting to be inputted. So for example, this is one example which was given in the Salesforce documentation, and it's get weather. So we need two things. So one is we need location, the other one is unit. So location is any city or state, unit is whether it's in Celsius or Fahrenheit, and you can also provide whether which of these two parameters are mandatory. For example, location is mandatory, maybe Celsius and Fahrenheit is not. So this is the format that you provide. Another example is this format where we require a string as an input parameter, which is called as query. So basically you pass a query and then you put an output. So basically these two are the definitions of how our function will look like. And then what we try to do is using some helper functions, we build these end function callable steps, and post that is done, we can make calls to these functions. So what is going to happen is once we load this model, we provide it some query, then we try to map these results, we'll get the JSON response, and I will just show how exactly it will look like. So these are the default examples which are provided in Salesforce documentation. So here is a function, and what it tries to do is, based on the query that has been sent, it tries to get the response. So let's say what's the weather looks like in New York in Fahrenheit. So this is the query that we have created, and internally what is going to happen is we are going to map with these two functions, whether get weather and search, and it's also going to try to locate what are the different parameters. So for example, let's say when you ask this query, what's the weather like in New York in Fahrenheit, what is going to happen is you will get this JSON response which tells you which API to call. So for example, you have to call get weather API, and the arguments are location as well as unit. So if you see this query, we have asked about New York, so it correctly detected New York. Then the unit, which is Fahrenheit, so it correctly detected this. Now the second question we can ask is get latest news on startups, and what is going to happen is it is going to realize that out of these two function API calls, I have to call the search API and I have to provide a particular query format. So for example, here what happened is it is able to identify that we have to call search function, and what we need is a query which is latest news on startups. So this is the query that is going to be sent. So this is how it is working. Now what we have done with the additional steps is we just created a local Flask function, and the reason to do it was we just wanted to see all those things, like for example weather APIs and search APIs, they work good, but can we replicate a proxy API from ourselves? So that was the intention. So what we did was we created a Flask mini app, and we are running within this cell using threading. So basically what we have done is we have defined three functions, or three routes as such. So one route is default route, where basically it's just telling us that okay, this is running. The second route that what we have done is a customer route, where it expects a customer ID, and once the customer ID is provided, then what can happen is we can output the exact response for that particular customer ID. For example, if you give 1001, you will get this data, which is 1001, name, status, balance. And again, the reason why we have created this is you can replicate it for any business application or business function call. So for example, let's say you accept some customer ID, you go and fetch some data from DB. So that was the reason why we created this. The third route that we created is send email, which expects an email, and again we are just doing a dummy where we expect it to just send a response that email has been sent to this particular email ID. These are all proxy, but again it's worthwhile to check the performance on these. In real life, definitely you can change this. And what we are doing is we are running in background so that we can use the Colab itself to run these. So basically what is happening is when you run this whole Flask application is going to run on port 5000 behind the scenes, and then you can query that. So for example, using some curl command like localhost 5000, when we do the localhost 5000, if you see the route, it's this route which says healthy. So basically when you make this call, it is going to, let's say connect, and it is going to tell exactly what the status is, which is healthy. Then the other curl command that we can give is localhost 5000 customer ID 1001. So for example, if you see, we just said it 1001, so it is going to give us this JSON response, and that's exactly what it did. So let's say we did it like this. So I will just I just copy paste it like this. I will just show. So this is what it did, and you can change it. So you can change it to 1002 and the response will be different. So this is 102. So basically you are passing customer ID and you are getting some results. Then again we have this email as such, where we are sending some email ID, and there is a process by which we can send an email in background, and the status could be email sent and so on. So this is the third route here, very simple route where we are just expecting some email ID, and then we are sending the status as sent. So this is there. So we have 3 REST API endpoints, and the reason why we created it was we just wanted to see if we can make this function calls to at least these 2 APIs which are at the end, which is the customer API as well as the send email API. Now, since we have to make a call, we have to make some changes in our program. So earlier we have this weather and search APIs, but now what we are doing is we are defining customer API and send email API, and this is nothing but the description of our REST API. So basically what is expected as an input, that is what we are trying to do for the customer one, and similarly for send email, what expectation we wanted to do, that is what we are trying to do. So this is how we define our API specification. Then we are just calling like just to check whether how's the JSON response of this large action model looks like. So for example, I said get results for customer ID 1001 and send email to this address. So if you see, it correctly identified the name of the API that we need to call as well as the arguments that we need to send. So this is exactly what had happened. But just to give go one more step ahead, what we try to do is, this is all fine, but can we actually call the function also? So this will definitely give you what parameters to pass, but can we execute those function API calls? So for that I just built one utility. What it tries to do is, from this JSON response that we got, it tries to build the arguments and then send it. So for example, here we said base API call query. So basically this get result for customer ID 1001 was passed to this large action model, and all the parameters were defined as such, and then we formed a base URL and sent this all the parameters to it to get the response. And here is the response. So if you see, it's actual API call. So this is the actual response which has come, and when you say send email to address, this is the actual response which has come, which is status equals to send. So here we were just looking towards what will be the output, and here what we are trying to do is we are trying to have the actual function calls. So at least I am excited to see this large action models, and definitely this is nothing new. So there have been frameworks like AutoGen or Crew, which tries to do the same thing, but again, as far as I understand, these are like sort of steps which are taken specifically to call some functions, and the way it has been promoted is it can be used for automating business process. So definitely worthwhile to check and to keep an eye on. So all the models as such which Salesforce has given are there in Hugging Face. So all of these models are here, and definitely it was very worthwhile to call these models and see the response. So thanks teams, thanks for watching. Bye.